Yo, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? So I've got my deck list here for OP02 Luffy, and this is the deck that I'll be running in today's Treasure Cup. If you're watching this video right now, I am live over on Twitch. I will post the link up here, but it's twitch.tv/TheLuffyTV. And I am super excited. I think that today is going to be a great event. I'm going to be streaming the whole thing, and I'm excited to play some good matchups. But I just want everybody to know I'm not going to make one of those deck profiles where I'm flipping through each card and, you know, leaving you hanging to where you can just skip to the end of the video. You can see the entire profile right here from the very beginning. I don't care if you just want to look at the profile and then dip, that's fine. I totally get it. But if you want to hear my opinion on the breakdown of each card and what their value is, that's what I'm going to go over. Some of these cards are in here to deal with certain matchups. Some of these cards are in here to more or less, they're just staples and, you know, you got to have them. But then there's some other cards that kind of tech around, you know, what the idea of this deck is supposed to be. But so to get into it, I will go ahead and start with the two worst matchups for this deck. This deck was built to deal with Whitebeard. It was built to deal with Zoro. It is very good against Kinemon. It's just sometimes you get unlucky. Kinemon high rolls, you know, they get Okiku down. You don't have Jet Pistol or any answer to it, and you're trying to put down cards, but they'd constantly just get, you know, KO'd. It can be a tough matchup, but most of the time against Kinemon, this deck performs very, very well. Your worst matchups, though, are Doflamingo and Smoker. Doflamingo is just an extremely tough matchup where he goes wide as possible, and it's very difficult to keep up with the pacing of Doflamingo's deck. And there is a card in here that helps with that, but if it's taken out, it's tough. So you kind of got to protect it with your life. So, and I'll explain that once I go over it in just a minute. But your other worst matchup, Smoker. You can't KO the blocker, Borsellino. You got to try and swing through it. You usually end up missing one swing, or basically, you know, it's almost like you're playing a Dawn down sometimes. But then also just the KO ability of all the cards being 4-cost essentially is just super easy for Smoker. So it's a tough matchup, but from looking at the data, there doesn't seem to be a lot of Smoker players that run in these tournaments. It is, you know, not an unpopular deck. It was actually tied for the 4th most played at one of the most recent, was it regional? Yeah, regionals. However, it's only got 30 people out of like the 400 something pool there. So the vast majority of these percentages of, you know, players are going to be Whitebeard, Zoro, Kinemon, you know? So that's what I'm really kind of basing this deck around, is trying to be able to manage what statistically I'll most likely be matching up against. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go through each card, and I'm first going to start with 2 cards kind of out of order. So the card I'm going to start with first is Nami. I'm going to start with Nami, and I'm going to start with Whitebeard Pirates because these are your searchers. So Nami's going to search your Straw Hat Pirates in the deck. You have 19 Straw Hat hits. You know, you can't search Nami, unfortunately, so Nami doesn't count. But you have 19 hittable targets. You know, you have Brook, Nico Robin, Zoro, Brook yet again. You also have 5-drop Luffy, Radical Beam, and Jet Pistol. And what you're going to be picking up is definitely based off of what matchups you're against. You know, and that just comes with practice and learning them. That's why I've been practicing this deck a lot for the, you know, for the region, or excuse me, the Treasure Cup today. But yeah, I mean, you get the idea. You could be searching out 2K counters. You could be searching out, you know, Radical Beam for endgame, searching out Jet Pistol to potentially do some board clear. You might need a Rush card, because Rush card gets you a body on the board and potentially ends up, you know, taking out some of your opponent's rested characters. So that's really going to be situational. You know, you just got to find out what you think is best for the matchups, and I'll kind of go over what I think is best for certain matchups, but, you know, yeah, you get the idea. Whitebeard Pirates, we run 3 of. 3 Whitebeard Pirates is in this deck simply because it's the only searcher right now for Whitebeard. Ezo is in set 3, so I would much prefer to run Ezo, but Whitebeard Pirates is pretty sick on trigger, honestly. The trigger activates the main effect of the card, and you get to search for a Whitebeard Pirates card. It is really, really helpful when you're trying to find Newgate for certain matchups. It's extremely helpful if you need to find Marco. Marco is one of the most important cards in this deck, if not the most important card, honest to God. It also helps you find Jozu, a 2k counter. You know, it's super helpful. And if you're up against Zoro, you're looking for Vista. You might want to use Vista to start gaining some board presence, but also taking out some of those low, like, one-cost 3k, 2k power cards that he's swinging with every single turn. So the searchability is super helpful, and that's why it's in the deck. And then we'll go on to Otama here. Obviously, 2k counter, arguably like the best 2k counter in the game. Just give your opponent's character minus 2000. It just combos so well with everything in the deck. So we have Jet Pistol, we've got Newgate, you've got what is it, Nico Robin, Vista. I mean, you name it, it pretty much combos with a lot of those things. And sometimes it does hurt to play, but you have to know your situation. You know, if you're playing from behind and you need to board clear, Otama's going to help you do that if you have Nico Robin on board or if you have a Vista in hand. So that's where Otama falls in, and it's unfortunate it's not searchable, but it's still such an amazing card. You end up seeing it a lot. You know, you might bottom deck 1 or 2 from Nami or Whitebeard Pirates search, but it's okay. Usually seeing 1 is super helpful. You normally want to hang on to 1 against Kinemon, just because dealing with certain cards without having Otama can be really difficult. So getting that Otama Jet Pistol combo can be really, really nice. You know, but Kingdu and Newgate actually make up for not having those cards sometimes against Kinemon, being able to swing really large against their 7-drop blocker, their, you know, 8-drop Odin, or sometimes even 8-drop Kid if some of them run it. And yeah, so great card. And can't say enough, enough about Otama there. Brook the 2k counter here. There's not really much to say. This card is kind of a interesting choice. Like, I wanted a 2k counter that is searchable, and Brook is it. You know, I was playing with Sanji, but I feel as though Sanji after turn 1 or 2 is just useless. Absolutely useless. So it's only a 2k counter, but Brook sometimes at the end of the game can be useful to play in conjunction with Edward Newgate's ability. There's the occasional moment where I was like, man, I wish I just had like one more Dawn or something like that. Like I could just attach one more rested Dawn. But Brook was like, I can put the body on the board, get that down, so I'd have the swing for next turn, potential lethal, use Newgate's ability, and then throw down a Marco, swing for, you know, I don't know, how much would I have left at that point? Probably like 7 or 8 with leader. I'm assuming like actually 8 or 9 using leader ability, and then still have a Dawn left over for Radical Beam. So you're getting a 12k or 12k swing in with Newgate and a 8 or 9k swing with your leader. You're clearing some stuff on that turn. It's really nice. And yeah, I think that the card is useful in the late game. It's not great in the early game. Would never play it until the very end. And it's super rare that I would even play it at the very end. It's usually speaking just a searchable 2k counter. But then we have Vista. Vista is like, this card slaps. It absolutely slaps. This card is so good against blue, for the most part, Dofi, simply because you have Otama, and also you have 4-drop Brook, and we're going to get to that card. That card is sometimes the bread and butter of certain matchups. It's really a card that you don't see a lot, and that's why I think it's going to catch a lot of people off guard today in the tournament, but it is extremely potent. That card it sticks, and people are very scared of it. But Vista combos well with Otama. It combos well with Brook. You know, it's a card that just deals with Zoro so easily. If you're playing against the Zoro matchup, you're trying to mulligan for Vista. You're trying to mulligan for Nico Robin. You really want to find those searchers so that you can get some, you know, bodies on board. Having Zoro, the rush card, is also extremely helpful. You know, it's a great card. You know what it does. It's pretty simple. That's about it. Nico Robin, no need to explain this very much, but the one thing that I need to explain is why there are 4 Vistas and 2 Nico Robins. So Vista just seems to be absolutely more consistent with being able to KO something, whereas Nico Robin I can play and it can get KO'd the next turn pretty easily. It could also get Otama Vista, it could get Jet Pistol, it could get rested by green, it could get bounced back by blue. You play Vista, it's done its job. It's already doing its job on turn. But Nico Robin is still good if you can get it in certain matchups, and you can play it on curve. If you can't, you know, it's a 1k counter at the very least. It also, you know, it could be helpful. I think it's a great card against green. It does get rested, but it also does, usually speaking, draw attacks. So you'll either get 2 swings at it, or you'll get at least 1 Dawn attached to leader to swing for 6. So I personally think that the card at 2 feels good. Yeah, I kind of would like it at 3 against Zoro, but it's like such a niche matchup. It's not great against Whitebeard. It's, you know, it's got its matchups, but it also has its weak points. So I like it at 2. It feels good. For Jozu, of course, the card never gets played. Don't ever play this card. If you do, you're insane. 2k counter. And the other thing is that, oh, which I also forgot to mention about Vista, is that this card can be discarded for Marco's ability, right? So Jozu is essentially a 2k counter or discard for Marco's ability. I wouldn't prioritize discarding this for Marco first, simply because I would prefer getting rid of a 1k counter over a 2k, but it also depends on board state. If I have a very big board, you know, I might be tempted to just start swinging aggressively with everything, let some things die, and then play an Atmos. So I would discard Jozu over an Atmos, but it really just depends on the situation. But yeah, 2k counter, it's great. Zoro, 3-drop rush card. Card's insane. You know, I run it at 3. It's searchable. It basically just helps you deal with a lot of characters that have been played, rested. It can help you get an extra swing. A lot of the times I'll actually end up playing it, depending on the matchup, I'll actually end up playing it on curve on turn 2 and then don't even swing with it. It's just, it depends on the matchup, but realistically, like anything other than red, you know, shoot, actually, if it's Whitebeard, yeah, I'd play it and I won't swing with it. 100%. I put it down, and then I basically become something that my opponent is scared of and needs to either deal with, and they usually speaking have to burn 2 cards minimum to get rid of it, usually. But it is, yeah, it's great. I'll swing, obviously, rush against like blue, against smoker, you know, black. I'll play it and rush against sometimes green. It depends on the situation, depends on if they have rested cards, but yeah, solid card. And we got it at 3 in this deck. Brook. Now this card is so good. I love this card. I had this card in my deck before and people laughed at me. And then I feel like I changed my deck up a little bit to where I felt like it didn't fit. But thank you to a great recommendation from my man Russ over at Someone's PC. He gave me, you know, the suggestion to include it back in because this card works really well in conjunction with, you know, some of the cards in the deck, but also simultaneously, it is a great card for dealing against some of my worst matchups. So a lot of blues characters are all 4,000 or 7,000 power or 5,000 for that matter. So 4, 5, and 7. Those are very bad numbers for me to use Jet Pistol, Vista, Nico Robin, Newgate ability. But Brook helps alleviate that, and it also helps clear the board substantially. So in the blue matchup, you are defending this card with your life. You are defending this card to try and get it at least useful for 2 turns, because it can really sway the tides of you having advantage or disadvantage. It's a great card. I've been enjoying it. It's also searchable by Nami. Can't complain. Now, Marco, I would say the best card in the deck. This card is crazy. So the entire idea of this deck is to essentially take life aggressively. Like, your first 2 life are almost always free, except for Zoro. I'd maybe counter out depending on my hand and depending on my board state. I'd maybe counter out of that 4th life once, just so that they have to rest another card. If it's like they don't have another swing with a character and they only have swing with leader, I'm gonna probably take the life. But I mean, these are all situational things. It comes down to how much dawn they have left, all kinds of stuff. But once you get down to 2 life, Marco and Radical Beam come into play. I usually like to play Marco once I'm at around 3 life, if possible. You know, sometimes it just happens that I play it exactly on 2 life. But Marco is searchable by Whitebeard Pirates. It is hands down like your bread and butter for surviving at the very end of the game. You're getting low on cards, you're getting low on life so that you can use these cards, Marco and Radical Beam, to your advantage while also having a ton of resources in hand. This deck isn't really designed on you being able to play multiple cards per turn. You're normally speaking playing like 1, potentially 2, usually just 1 card per turn, and then swinging big with leader at one of their characters, or you're swinging with what you already have on board at one of their characters, and you'll slowly whittle away at their health, but maintaining board control. And that's, you know, an advantage of this deck. And then, you know, we just go to Atmos. I'm going to put Atmos and King Du at the same spot. You know, we have 2 of each of those. They're trashable for Marco's regeneration ability. They're also they're also great bodies to have on the board. I love King Du. I honestly really like King Du to the point that I'd love to have, you know, 3 of it in this deck somehow. However, I think that where I've come up with, you know, some of these numbers it's looking good. It feels good. And I'm just going to keep it the way it is. We're going to see how it goes today. But 2 Atmos, 2 King Du. These cards are just so great. You put them down and, you know, you can start swinging for big numbers against a lot of their rested cards, against their life. You know, you don't have to attach a lot of dawn to be getting cards out of their hand, or they're taking life, you know, pretty aggressively, simply because you're attaching 1 to Atmos for a 7k swing, or you're just swinging with King Du for 7k. It's also very easy to bring them up to 8k and 7k using your leader ability. Now, some people have asked me in the past, why aren't you running like the 4-cost Luffy for 6,000? Why wouldn't you run that instead? Because it's searchable by Nami. The reason why is because we have 19 Whitebeard Pirates to be hit by the Whitebeard Pirate event card, but we also have them in there for the reason of discarding for Marco. I don't need Straw Hats over and over again. I've got 19 searchable for each Whitebeard and Straw Hats. So realistically, the idea is so that I have trash cards to bring Marco back from the grave. And it's just, Marco just absolutely slaps in some of these matchups. It's so good. Yeah, but past King Du, past Atmos, 5-drop Luffy. 5-drop Luffy, we have it 2 cost, or excuse me, 2 of in the deck. And it is, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a tech card, but it's not a card that, in my opinion, needs to be in the deck. I could run a 4th Zoro, and you could run like a 3rd Nico Robin, or like a 4th Jet Pistol, or a 4th Brook. I would prefer the Brook, honestly. But yeah, like 4 Zoro, 4 Brook. But this card, it's just so helpful in certain matchups. I have it at the 2 of, just because if you do happen to draw it when, you know, you're playing against, you know, a match that's got like these pesky blockers that you don't have you unfortunately don't have the removal of Vista, Jet Pistol, Newgate, or, you know, vice versa on board or in hand in order to be able to deal with the situation at hand. A lot of the times, you know, people will protect their most valuable asset or character on the board with, you know, a little blocker that I might not have the answer for. And that 5-drop Luffy is the answer. That 5-drop Luffy does take care of those situations, but they are few and far between, so that's why I have it at 2. And then we have 3 Edward Newgates. You gotta have it. The card's great. The card's insane. And it's so great once you have some Radical Beams in hand, some Marcos on board. It's basically unkillable once you have Marcos on board, even 1 Marco. It's a force to be reckoned with, and it combos so well with Brook. I mean, like, the nice thing about Brook is playing it on curve, amazing, but playing it after you have a Newgate down and a Marco down, you're just KOing every 5k that drops. Like, every 5,000 power card is doomed to die when that combination happens. It is rough to deal with. And, you know, the nice thing is bringing your leader up will also give you some survivability by bringing your leader to 7k. It's huge. Only run 3 of, just because it can be found pretty easily with Whitebeard Pirates. You got to know your matchups, though. There's just certain matchups that the card doesn't feel as useful, per se. But it definitely does its job. It's just the hardest part about it is if you do have it early, it can feel like a brick sometimes. So I usually like to find it if I possibly can and search it out into like maybe turn 2 or 3. But you normally will end up pulling it from life or from just drawing cards, you know, each turn. But there are what's the matchup? Kinemon. It is a very, very good card against Kinemon to have in deck. It's pretty huge. And yeah, the tough part about the Smoker matchup that I was talking about earlier is this card is so killable by Smoker. It's almost like useless. This card is almost useless. But it depends. Like, if they have Kuzan on board, I would never play this. You know, whether it's 10-drop or 4-drop Kuzan, I would borderline never play this card because it's basically just a free KO. Yeah, and then we'll go into the events. I already talked about Whitebeard Pirates, so we don't have to go over that again. But 4 Radical Beams. This, in conjunction with Marco, as well as the boost from Edward Newgate, really makes this deck extremely hard to deal with. It's like you can stay alive at moments where they're like, wow, I'm just battering at him and he's able to stay alive. You know, you'll be at 0 life with 2 Marcos on board and you got a Radical Beam in hand and like a couple of counters as well. They can't do anything, you know, and then your next turn, after they've swung with everything, you now have 2 5k swings, a 10k swing, your leader. You just look like you're in such a good position. So it really makes for getting through this deck very difficult for certain ones. But Jet Pistol is going to be that card, man. I honestly at one point almost considered cutting it, and then I was reminded about Okiku. I was reminded about 5-drop Luffy and Whitebeard or in Strawbeard, that, you know, it's just these cards have to die. They have to die. And if they don't, it's so rough for you to deal with. So Jet Pistol is amazing. You know, you get it in life. You can use it for certain situations. It's, yeah, it's a great card. I mean, I run 3 of. I don't think I need to run 4. I've even run 2 and it felt okay. But it doesn't feel as, you know, findable. So I will say 3 for consistency to at least see 1 a game. Usually you will at least see 1 a game, and that's helpful because it's pretty good in certain matchups. But, you know, in conjunction with Brook and everything, Otama, you know, it's just card slaps. But yeah, these are my thought processes on what this deck was made to do, what it was built around, and how I believe it should work. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I think that now this is going to be the final iteration and I'll be running it today. So if yet again you are watching this and you're at the end of the video now, I'm live right now on Twitch. I have it in the description below. I have it over here. I'm live right now and I'm playing in today's Treasure Cup. Wish me luck. Come over and check it out. I'm super excited. And yeah, hopefully we can put out some great matches and I'll be able to upload every single one of the Treasure Cup matches to the YouTube channel. So hope you guys enjoyed and let me know your thoughts down below. I'll see you soon. Peace.